and Worcestershire. Worcester sauce. Yo, come on, everybody says it different. It's not just me. It's not just me. The brown sauce, the brown sauce. So today we're making something that I'm really excited about, Clams Casino. It's a super popular East Coast dish. You see at a lot of places on the Jersey Shore, in Long Island. And basically what it is baked clams with some extra flavor to it. We're gonna use some thick cut bacon, bell peppers, which are also classic ingredients that go with the Clams Casino. It's really pretty simple. There's a decent amount of mise en place, but it's all stuff that gets done really quick and kind of comes together fast. One of the techniques for the Clams Casino that we're gonna do is we're gonna steam the clams just a little bit till they open up. One of the things that I like to do is not just steam it in just water, but we're gonna steam it in some white wine as well. So I got a pint container here of about half water. The other half is gonna be white wine. The other half goes down the hatch. As you can tell, we have the pot heating up already. We really don't want to put too much in there, just enough to cause steam for the clams to open. We don't want these to cook too much at all. We just kind of want to place them in there, and right when they begin to open, we're gonna yank them. Put the top over that. We're gonna check that in about another minute or so. Another way of cooking the clams is basically putting them into an oven, 200 degrees, and when they crack open just a little bit, you get in there with a shucker and crack the top shell right off and then begin stuffing them. Also, you can put them in the freezer. The same thing will happen. Clams will start to open up just a little bit, and then you're able to kind of open them up and kind of stuff them after that. The advantage of doing it that way is that you're really keeping the clam from not overcooking. One thing we really don't want to do is we don't want this to go too long because it's going to lose all of its juices, it's going to lose all the flavor. So while our clams are cooking, we're going to get to preparing some of the other mise en place. This great thick cut bacon that we're going to dice up and then we're going to throw into the cast iron and render it down. The way that this bacon is cut is extra thick, it's smoked. It's gonna add a lot of flavor to these clams. This is starting to boil over a little bit. We're gonna take it off of the heat and take a look. And it's really perfect timing. We got them right there where these clams just started to open, and I'm gonna do my best to keep as much juice kind of in that shell as I possibly can. We're actually gonna reserve a little bit of this liquid later, and we'll mix some of this liquid into the breadcrumbs to kind of add a little bit of flavor and a little moisture to the breadcrumbs as well. One thing we did before we got to this process was we really scrubbed down the clams and made sure they were clean. If clams don't open or they open up just a very little while you do this process, just don't use them. Take this extra liquid, let it cool, and set it off to the side for now. So we got the clams right now kind of hanging out behind me, just resting and cooling off. It's important that they cool off because when we stuff them, we want to be able to handle them. It's not too hot. So now I've had my cast iron kind of sitting over the induction heat. We'll just put a little bit of olive oil. When it's time to render the bacon, we don't want to put it on too high. We want to keep it kind of low. This recipe calls for butter in a couple different places, so I'm going to add it in right now. Can't go wrong with butter and bacon. It might clog an artery or two, but it's worth it. Fuck it. A small dice. They're going on the clams, so you don't want it to be too big. I was raised clamming as a kid, going out to Long Island and, going into the Long Island Sound and learning how to find the clams with your feet, bringing them home and throwing them right on the grill. I think of Atlantic City when I think of Clams Casino. It just kind of makes sense to have Clams Casino in a casino, right? I'm gonna cut up one more rib of these peppers, and I think that should be just about right. This is one of those dishes where the whole house will smell delicious when you're working on them. We don't want them to go all the way because they still have to go into the salamander, so we're gonna take them off the heat. We're gonna scoop these out. And what I use for this is a slotted spoon. The slotted spoon allows the grease to kind of fall through and it won't make a big mess on the dish. Now we're gonna get to one of the most important parts, which is seasoning the breadcrumb. We have about 1.5 cups of breadcrumb here. So first thing that we're gonna do is go with the garlic. And we just have a microplane here, 1 head of garlic to start with. And then we're gonna use about 2 ounces of this really nice olive oil. Fresh ground black pepper. Be generous, be generous. Salt to taste as well. Just a little bit of kosher salt. We're gonna add parsley. For me, I usually don't like cheese mixed with my seafood, but for this application, it actually works really nicely. We're just gonna microplane a little bit of this Parmesan Reggiano into the breadcrumbs. What it's gonna do when it cooks, it's gonna kind of help hold everything together. 25 grams of butter. So we're gonna go in a couple dabs of the brown sauce, right? Oop, mazel tov. It's getting late, folks. Take a sip of wine. Just with a kitchen spoon, we're gonna go ahead and give it a nice mixture. We're missing a little bit of lemon, a little bit of acid, and we'll be straight. We're gonna zest some lemon in here. If you got one of these nifty little lemon squeezers, it'll help you out. Much better. The lemons added like another note to it that really brought it out, and it really tastes great. We're gonna get the clams ready where they need to be. So first things first is kind of just, without damaging the clam or getting any shells inside of it, take that top shell off. So now that we have our clams laid out, we're just gonna make sure that the membrane is separated from the shell itself. In addition to everything else that we put in our breadcrumb mixture, I'm just gonna add 1 or 2 tablespoons of the cooked down liquid that we actually steam the clams in, just to kind of moisten up the breadcrumbs a little bit. We're gonna saute these peppers off. We don't want the peppers to be sauteed too much. We don't want them to get soft. We still want them to have that bite and that pepper flavor. There we go. And that smell is just, the butter with the peppers is just very familiar and very delicious. As these are cooking off, I'm gonna start to stuff these clams, and one at a time. Just kind of take it right over the top, just like that. I like to kind of loosely pack them, not too tight, but with the back of your spoon, kind of push it down a little bit. So with the peppers, just that confetti style, you know, if they get a little bit on the plate, who cares? I'm gonna look for these pieces of bacon that are, you know, the smaller pieces, because I don't really want them to overpower what we got going on with the clams already. At the bottom of this cast iron pan, what we did was fill the bottom of it with rock salt. The reason for that is the shells of baked clams, it's a little hard to keep them stable in a pan. Someone came up with the idea of putting rock salt on, and basically what you do, you place the shell right on it and it keeps it sturdy. Another thing that it does is that it stabilizes the heat, and it helps the heat cook evenly. Here we go, we're gonna pop them right in the salamander. We got it on medium high right now. And just give that a few minutes. When that breadcrumb is nice and dark brown, that means they're ready to go. All right, beautiful. So I think we did pretty good with these clams. The breadcrumbs are nice and brown. You could really smell the fragrance from the bacon and the chopped up peppers. The last thing that I'm gonna do is just kind of take some lemons, and we're just gonna squirt them right over the top. Give it a little bit of that lemon juice flavor that everybody loves on their seafood. And then of course, if you're at an Italian-American restaurant and you don't have parsley sprinkled all over everything, then you're in the wrong place. All right. Now the deciding moment. Smells good. And really nice. The first thing you taste is like sort of the juiciness of the clam, and it's still nice and plump. The bacon is really nice and cooked and charred up from being inside the salamander. Pretty damn good, if I don't say so myself. Guys, thank you so much for hanging with me, making one of my favorite dishes, Clams Casino. For the recipe, just click the link in the description below.